Lena Carter knew the call would come eventually, but she didn't expect it this morning. She stood in the cramped kitchen of her apartment, her hands covered in oatmeal cookie dough she was prepping for neighborhood orders, when the phone buzzed. On the screen, Seattle Medical Oncology Center. The call lasted barely 3 minutes. Calm, clinical, devastating. "We're afraid the current treatment is no longer effective. Without further action, Mrs. Evelyn Carter may only have weeks left." Lena lowered the phone slowly. Dough clung to her fingers, but she couldn't feel it. The silence in the kitchen thickened. Outside, the rain tapped against the glass, soft and persistent. A cold breeze snuck in through a cracked window. She pulled her cardigan tighter. She stepped into her mother's room. Evelyn Carter lay quietly on the bed, pale but smiling as her daughter entered. "Any orders this morning?" Her voice was thin, almost a whisper, but laced with her usual humor. "Yeah, Clara ordered her usual pumpkin cookies." Lena offered a smile, fragile but steady. Normalcy. She clung to it like a raft, but it was slipping through her fingers, crumbling like cookie dust. 3 years ago, when her mom was diagnosed with stage 2 cancer, Lena gave everything up: her vet school admission, full-time job offers, even dating. Her world shrank to caretaking, bills, and survival. She baked from home to save on rent, worked nights as a part-time barista at a cozy shop called Wild Cafe, a 15-minute walk away. No sick days, no vacations, no luxuries. This month's bill was overdue. Hospital debt hovered around $48,000, 0 cents, like a sword suspended above her. She didn't tell her mother. Evelyn was too weak to carry more. But every time Lena watched her sleep, frail hands curled under the blanket, IV machine humming softly, Lena felt like she was rowing upstream with the current rising fast. She was tired, bone deep, and the scariest part? No one was coming to save her. That afternoon, after pushing out a delivery to a regular, Lena stood under Seattle's gray drizzle. Her hoodie clung to her skin, phone battery at 8%. She opened her banking app, $36, 0 cents left. A passing bus sprayed water on her shoes. She didn't flinch. Little inconveniences like that didn't bother her anymore. Only one thing ached constantly now. Her mother was dying, and she had no way to stop it. That evening at Wild Cafe, Lena tied on her apron and did her tasks, wiping counters, pouring lattes, smiling at regulars. But inside, one dangerous thought looped quietly. What if there was another way? She had no idea that across the city, a man was staring at his own reflection, asking himself the very same thing, and fate was about to throw them into each other's lives, violently, unexpectedly, and forever. Julian Reeves had never taken a wrong turn in his life until a software glitch sent him exactly where he needed to be. At 35, he had built Centricore, a cloud security empire, from his parents' basement into a multi-million-dollar company. His HQ now sat on the 42nd floor of a downtown Seattle skyscraper. Love was not on his agenda. Everything in Julian's world was planned, polished, and profitable. Romance? A variable he had no use for. Feelings? Inefficient code. Family? Well, his mother had opinions. "Julian, sweetheart, it's time you thought about having a child. The board's asking questions. You're the CEO without a successor." He ignored most of her calls, but she wasn't wrong. Julian didn't need a wife. He needed an heir, someone to carry on what he had built. He met with several surrogacy agencies, all clinical, cold, transactional. He craved something slightly more, human. Not love, just connection. "You ever heard of LinkUp?" his assistant suggested during a dull quarterly meeting. It was an app for professional networking with a softer social component. Julian downloaded it half-heartedly, filled in the bare minimum. Tech founder seeking meaningful conversation. He meant to filter profiles, MBAs, lawyers, strategic thinkers. But the app glitched. Instead of curated matches, it showed nearby, Lena C. No photo, no job title, just a name. He almost closed the app, but something made him click. 15 minutes later, Julian stood outside Wild Cafe, a small corner coffee shop nestled between a laundromat and a bookstore. The place smelled like cinnamon, roasted beans, and something far too warm for his usual world. What am I doing here? He thought, nearly walking away. Then he saw her, behind the espresso machine, apron dusted with flour, hair in a messy bun, no makeup except a hint of gloss. Lena Carter moved with practiced ease, smiling as she handed drinks to customers. There was something real about her, no performance, no pretense. When he stepped up, she tilted her head slightly and asked, "What can I get started for you?" Her voice was husky, the kind worn by early mornings and not enough sleep. "Coffee. Black. Just black," he said, caught off guard. "You sure? We've got this Ethiopian blend. Tastes like silk in a cup." She smiled, not selling, just offering. He nodded. "Okay, surprise me." When she handed him the cup, their fingers brushed, brief, electric, enough to tilt his axis. Julian found a seat, and then he didn't leave. Julian didn't come back to Wild Cafe for the coffee. The second time he arrived near closing, Lena was wiping tables, hair a mess, flour on her apron, still smiling as she helped an elderly woman rewrap a fallen cookie. No one offers kindness like that after a 9-hour shift, unless they're wired to care. The third time, he sat quietly in a corner, watching. A college kid came in, fumbling with trembling hands, counting change. Lena gave him a hot cocoa and a pastry, free of charge, with a whisper, "Take it. Someone once helped me too." And Julian saw something in her no algorithm could replicate, compassion without an audience, not for attention, just genuine kindness. But he also noticed something else. After every smile, her shoulders sagged. Her eyes were rimmed with exhaustion. She poured drinks with her left hand. Her right was bandaged. A burn, maybe, from the oven, from overwork, from not having time to take care of herself. That night, as the cafe thinned out, Julian watched Lena slump behind the counter, hiding a dizzy spell behind practiced stillness. Something in him broke protocol. He got up, walked to her. "Are you okay?" She startled. "Still breathing. What, you need more caffeine?" "A conversation," he said gently. "Private." She stared at him, wary and worn. If this is another attempt at some weird flirting tactic. It's not. He hesitated. It's a proposal, one that might help us both. She motioned Tess over, then removed her apron with slow fingers. They sat near the window, silence thick between them. "Go ahead," she said, "but if it's stupid, I swear I'll throw your fancy watch in the trash." Julian loosened a cuff, a rare gesture, like he was shedding the CEO for a moment. "I've noticed things about you. I'm not stalking you, I just see what's hard to hide. You take care of everyone else, even when you have nothing left. I've seen the way your eyes flick to the door, bracing for bad news. I've seen the bruises under your sleeves." Lena said nothing, her face unreadable. "I used to think I didn't need anyone, but lately, I've realized I was wrong. I want a child, an heir, not out of loneliness, just readiness. But I don't want it to be clinical. I want it to be chosen." He swallowed. "I want you to carry my child. In return, I'll pay for your mother's treatment, all of it. She'll get the best care, and you won't have to fight this alone anymore." Lena didn't move, didn't blink. "You think I'm desperate enough to sell my future for a lifeline?" she whispered, eyes sharp. "I think you're drowning and no one's throwing you a rope." Silent. Finally, Lena rose slowly. "You want a child from me?" He nodded. She leaned in, her voice low, steady. "Then marry me." Julian's breath hitched. "What?" "You don't get to buy me. If you want a future with my child, then do it right, legal, real, committed. Otherwise, walk out that door, and don't come back." And she walked away. Without looking back, Julian stayed, watching. And for the first time in his life, something began to shift. Julian didn't reply that night, but 3 days later, Lena found a thick envelope resting gently at her door. Inside was a legally printed marriage agreement and a small handwritten note. "If this is the only way to do the right thing, then I'll do it right, Julian." And so they got married, an extravagant gown, no teary vows, just Lena in a soft cream dress rented from a tiny shop on Capitol Hill, Julian in a charcoal suit his assistant picked out last minute, and an 11-minute ceremony at the third-floor marriage office of Seattle City Hall. No flowers, no music, but not once did they break eye contact. "Do you take this man as your lawful husband under the law of Washington State?" the officiant asked. Lena glanced at Julian. His hand trembled slightly, but his gaze was steady. "I do," she whispered. 3 small words, nothing romantic, yet everything changed. Julian's penthouse was another world entirely. Perched above Lake Union, all glass and dark stone, it felt more like an art gallery than a home, impeccably curated and utterly lifeless. Lena entered carrying 1 suitcase, 3 jars of jam, a tray of cookies, a photo of her mother, and a quiet nervousness she couldn't name. Julian walked her through the apartment, then stopped at a closed wooden door. "This will be your room, private bathroom, closet, if you need your own space." She nodded. The room was clean, elegant, and sterile. No scent of people, no warmth. She unpacked her belongings. A photo frame, a few worn paperbacks, a bottle of vanilla, and placed them carefully as if trying to plant roots in unfamiliar soil. They lived like strangers. Julian left at 6 a.m., returned after 9. Lena worked evenings at Wild Cafe. They navigated around each other like 2 moons on separate orbits. They communicated through fridge notes. "Your favorite coffee, top shelf, left. Ordered sushi, no ginger. Reorganized the cabinets. Don't be surprised." And Lena noticed something. He paid attention to things she didn't realize she'd shared. She didn't like ginger, hated mugs with chips, preferred cookies in glass jars. One morning, she came into the kitchen and froze. Where her wobbly metal rack once stood, there was now a custom-built wooden baking shelf. Smooth oak, brass handles, a rotating tray, neatly installed. A sticky note taped to it read, "Thought you deserved better for your cookies." She touched the wood, smiled. Her eyes stung. At night, she found Julian wrestling with a skillet, frustration etched across his face. "Are you cooking breakfast at 9 p.m.?" she asked, half amused. He turned, chuckled. A real laugh. "I thought cooking would be like Python scripting. I underestimated eggs." She grinned. "Mind if I help?" They stood side by side. She guided his hand, showed him how to stir gently. Their fingers brushed. Neither flinched. Dinner was dry eggs and warm laughter. He began baking more in his kitchen. He stocked it with organic flour, real butter, Madagascar vanilla, and even hung a custom apron hook labeled Lena's. No need to ask, she knew it was him. One night, she baked an old-fashioned apple pie. Julian sat nearby, laptop open but untouched. He took a bite, then went still. "Tastes like home," he murmured. "Before my father died, my mom used to bake this every Sunday." Lena didn't say a word. She simply pushed the pie closer. They still slept in separate rooms, still hadn't held hands, hadn't kissed, but something between them was growing. Not fiery, but deep, not dramatic, but real. Like dough rising slowly, like a quiet flame warming the kitchen. Whatever it was, it had already begun. The second month after the wedding passed like a typical Seattle fog. Quiet, persistent, and heavy with something unseen shifting in the air. Lena and Julian were no longer total strangers. They hadn't touched each other in an intimate way, but the little things, the brush of a hand when passing a bowl, the lingering glance followed by a quick look away, held an unspoken gravity. One night, she returned from Wild Cafe drenched. Her hoodie clung to her skin, hair dripping, hands shivering. As she stepped into the apartment, Julian was in the kitchen, wearing a dark t-shirt, stirring something in a large pot. "Didn't think you ever ate after 8, she said, trying to sound casual despite the chill in her voice. He turned, clearly surprised to see her soaked. "Was the rain that bad?" "Bus got delayed. I walked." He didn't ask further, just opened the drawer, took out a towel, and gently began drying her hair, quietly, deliberately. She let him. For the first time, she didn't pull away. After dinner, vegetable stew a little too salty but warm, they sat on opposite ends of the sofa. The TV played an old movie neither of them were really watching. Outside, the rain whispered against the balcony. "Do you ever think about the life you could have had?" Lena asked, her eyes fixed on the window. Julian took a long pause, then answered, "I wanted to be an aerospace engineer. Then my dad died and my mom took on the debt. I chose what paid the bills fastest. Now you're a millionaire and still alone." He turned to her. "You?" She smiled faintly. "I dreamed of opening a bakery with red velvet chairs and a round window. But then Mom got sick and everything crumbled like stale cookies." They stared at each other, no longer with wariness, but with something gentler, understanding. And then, as if no explanation was needed, Julian moved closer. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. He brushed her cheek, eyes searching for permission. "If you don't want this, I'll stop," he said softly. Lena didn't speak, but her eyes answered. She nodded. "Barely." And just like that, the final line between them dissolved. For a long while, they simply sat in silence. Then, slowly, Julian reached for her hand, not with expectation, but with hope. Lena didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned into him, as if tired of holding her walls up alone. That night, there were no declarations of love, no romantic soundtrack. But every touch, every breath said the things they'd been afraid to voice. "I'm here. You're not alone. We deserve this." They didn't make love like two people fulfilling a contract. They made love like two people finally choosing each other. The next morning, Lena woke in Julian's bed. He sat beside her, ruffled hair, coffee in hand, scrolling the news on his tablet. "You're awake," he said without looking, though the curve of a smile tugged at his mouth. She pulled the sheet over her shoulder, smiling back. "Thought you'd be at work by now. Figured I could work from home today." She laughed softly, then tilted her head. "Julianne?" "Yeah?" They claimed that delivery from Deadweight's Lies did last night change anything. He set the tablet down, turned to face her. "No, but also, yes." "What does that mean?" "It didn't change the terms of our marriage, but it changed why I'm still here." She didn't respond right away, just looked at him, long and hard. Then she rested her head against his chest. They said nothing more. But both of them knew, from this moment on, this wasn't a marriage of convenience anymore. It was the one thing in their lives they hadn't planned, and the one thing worth holding on to. Since that night, something between Lena and Julian shifted, not drastically, but enough to make every touch and word feel heavier. They still shared dinners, morning coffees, and late-night shows. But Lena had begun to fear it all. Not Julian, but what he had come to mean. She had never allowed herself to need someone. And now, with every embrace, every familiar scent on a pillow, every quiet moment of safety, she felt that need, and it scared her more than being alone ever did. One morning, Lena woke earlier than usual. Julian was still asleep, one arm resting on the comforter where she'd been. She watched him for a long moment before slipping out of bed, grabbing her coat, and stepping onto the balcony. Seattle's air was colder than expected. Her fingers numbed in the fog, but inside she felt colder still. Julian cared for her, that was obvious, but he had never said he loved her, never said that this was more than a deal, and Lena, who had spent a lifetime in emotional poverty, began to wonder, what if this is just kindness? What if he's only playing the role of husband out of obligation? That afternoon, while Julian was in a Zoom meeting, Lena glanced at his desk and caught sight of a file. She didn't mean to read, but the bold header made her breath catch. Preliminary custody agreement template in case of divorce. She froze. No anger, no tears, just a hollow silence that echoed in her chest. She walked out quietly. Hours later, when Julian realized she was gone, he called. No answer. She didn't come home that night. No text, no explanation. Lena returned to her old apartment. Everything was still there. The wicker chair by the window, the forgotten jar of cookies, her mother's faded photo. She curled up on the small bed, clutching an old pillow, and, for the first time in weeks, she cried. Not because he betrayed her, but because she had allowed herself to trust, and now she felt foolish for it. The next morning, there was a knock. She expected the landlord, but when she opened the door, Julian was there. Eyes red, hair a mess. Not a multi-millionaire CEO, but a man completely achingly human. He didn't speak at first. He simply held out the file. "You saw this, didn't you?" Lena didn't reply. "It's a draft, a template my lawyer sent from months ago before us." He took a breath, his voice breaking. "I didn't throw it out. That was my mistake, but you have to know, I never thought about leaving, not once." Still, Lena said nothing. But her silence no longer felt like a wall, more like a tremor, something shaking. He stepped closer. "You can hate me, but don't make what we have a lie because of a paper I forgot to trash." She met his gaze, and for the first time she saw fear in his eyes, the same fear she had been hiding inside herself all along. Maybe they were both broken, but maybe, just maybe, that's why they found each other. Julian didn't demand an answer. He simply placed the file on the edge of the old kitchen counter and stepped back, voice low and rough. "I don't want this to end because of a misunderstanding, but if you need time, I'll wait." He turned toward the door, but before he crossed it, Lena called out, "Julian." Her voice wasn't loud, but it was enough to stop him. "I'm scared," she said plainly. No mask, no filter. "I'm scared that if I believe this, if I let go, if I love you, then one day you'll wake up and realize you chose wrong." Julian turned around. His eyes softened, like something finally clicked into place. "I'm scared too," he said. "Scared I'll ruin it, scared I'm not good enough, scared I don't know how to keep love when I find it." Lena let out a short laugh and sank into the wicker chair by the window. Isn't that something? Two adults, married, sharing a bed, and neither one brave enough to say, "I need you," or "I missed you." Julian sat across from her. This silence between them wasn't awkward anymore. It was honest. He reached out. She hesitated, then placed her hand in his. "So let's try again," he said. "Not because of a contract, not out of obligation, just because I want to. And I hope you do too. And if we mess it up again," she whispered, "then this time we fix it together." 1 week later, Julian did something Lena never expected. He took 3 full days off work. They left the city. No itinerary, no business calls, just a small cabin by the lake, a wood fireplace, and a fridge full of Lena's favorite ingredients. Each morning she baked. Julian made coffee, still awkward but no longer burned. They had breakfast on the porch, listened to birds, and talked about the small things. The one cake recipe Lena hates, the time Julian hacked a teacher's gradebook in high school. Lena laughed more. Julian spoke less, but each word mattered more. One night, they lit a fire outside. Lena sat close, her hair loose, the glow painting her cheeks pink. Julian hesitated, then reached out, gently brushing her wrist. "I love you." 3 words, not planned, not part of the agreement, not because it was time. They came because he couldn't not say them anymore. Lena looked at him for a long time, then quietly, "I love you too." No fireworks, no soundtrack, just truth, raw and real. It was the first time they stepped into love, not with caution, but with their full hearts. When they returned to Seattle, everything looked the same, the apartment, their routines, but something had changed. The way they looked at each other, there was no more fear, no more doubt. Lena slept beside him every night. Julian learned to make pancakes, even if he still burned the first few. She helped him stay on top of meetings. He read children's books to her at bedtime, though there was no child yet. But they both knew that child was coming. And this time, it wasn't a project. It was the result of the truest thing they had ever built. Love early Sunday morning, Lena sat on the bathroom floor, holding the pregnancy test in her hand, staring at the two red lines that appeared bold and undeniable. She couldn't take her eyes off it. Her heart pounded out of rhythm as if her body had known this all along, but her mind hadn't caught up. Pregnant. A simple word, but to Lena, it felt like an entire new world opening up. Not just a life forming inside her, but the result of everything she and Julian had gone through. She laughed, a quiet, trembling laugh, and tears spilled freely before she could stop them. At that moment, Julian opened the bathroom door, planning to ask if she wanted the fresh-baked bread. But when he saw her sitting on the floor, eyes red and swollen, hands still gripping the test, he froze at the doorway. "Lena, what's wrong?" he asked, alarmed, stepping closer. She didn't answer. She just handed him the stick, her gaze fixed on his face. Julian looked at it. 1 beat, 2, then his eyes widened. "You're... really?" She nodded, laughing through her tears. "We're having a baby, Julian." For a moment, he said nothing. Then, as if a switch had flipped, Julian pulled her into his arms. Without hesitation, without fear of hurting her. Like if he didn't hold her tightly enough, he might fall apart from happiness. He whispered into her hair, "Thank you. Thank you for staying, for trusting me, for this miracle." She smiled, pressing her cheek against his chest, hearing the steady beat of the heart of the man she loved. The man who was once just a contract, now everything. That afternoon, Lena stood in front of her phone for a long time. She hadn't called her mother since the cabin trip, partly because she wanted to keep it a secret, mostly because she didn't know how to say it. But now, every hesitation melted away. She pressed the call button. The phone rang. "Hello?" Her mother's voice, weak but familiar. "Hi, Mom. It's me. My girl, how are you? I've missed your voice so much." Lena bit her lip, then took a deep breath. "Mom, I have something special to tell you." "What is it, sweetheart?" I'm pregnant, Mom." Silence. Only the soft sound of wind on the other end. Then, a gasp, followed by laughter, shaky, tearful, but full of joy so deep it barely found breath. "Really? Are you serious?" "Yes, Mom, it's confirmed. Julian and I are going to have a baby." Her mother broke into sobs. "No more hiding. I thought I'd never become a grandmother. I was so afraid. You'd always be alone." Lena smiled, tears welling again. "I used to think that too. But then I met the right person. Not perfect, but the one who stayed, who chose to care, to love. Oh, my sweet girl, I'm so proud of you. You've been so strong all these years. Now you finally have your happiness." After hanging up, Lena held the phone to her chest, as if hugging her mother through the silence. In that moment, she understood. Love wasn't just what made your heart race, but what made the world feel safe, even through a single, quiet voice on the other end. That night, Julian placed his hand on her still flat belly. "There's a little life growing in here. Doesn't it feel strange?" "It does," Lena whispered, "but I'm not afraid." He looked at her, his voice gentle. "We'll do this together. Not just you. Never alone again." 5 years later, Vanilla Sky Bakery basked in the morning sun, the scent of butter and cinnamon spilling from the kitchen, drawing people in. Lena stood behind the counter, adjusting a tray of pastries, quietly running through ingredient measurements in her mind. The door opened. Julian walked in, carrying little Emma. Light brown curls, sharp gray eyes, and baby Noah snoozed on his shoulder. "Rescue team reporting in. Are the cupcakes ready?" he teased. Lena laughed, handing him a pre-packed box. "Here, for the superhero dad attending parent-teacher day." Emma squealed with joy and hugged her mom tightly. That afternoon, after closing the shop, they went for a walk, and Lena asked to stop by a familiar place, Wildy Cafe, where everything began. It looked the same. Warm lighting, foggy glass windows, cozy, inviting. They sat at the same table as 5 years ago. Julian glanced around, smiling softly. "I remember this place. I remember your eyes when I made that ridiculous offer." Lena giggled, "And I remember how insane I felt challenging you to marry me." Noah dozed in his stroller. Emma doodled on a napkin. And the two of them, once strangers bound by an agreement, were now a family. Julian held Lena's hand tightly. "I don't know what I ever did to deserve you, but I do know one thing." Lena tilted her head. "What's that?" They looked around at the cafe, the foggy window, the same chipped mug now held by Emma. So much had changed, yet the most important things had stayed: the quiet strength, the choice to try again, and the love that surprised them both. He smiled. Sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come from the boldest choices. She smiled back and nodded. "And I've never regretted mine."